Welcome to the Birdhouse Dynasty show. And tonight we're going to take a look at some deals post rookie draft in a few of my leagues. And let's get right to it. So, we're going to start off with my bottom line league and a big deal that happened there. We're going to share the screen here for you guys so you can check it out. This one had the Red Rocket Express getting Trevor Lawrence, A.T. Perry, and a 26 first from Break Yourself, who acquired Joe Burrow and Will Shipley. Now, breaking this one down, we can basically just push aside A.T. Perry and Will Shipley. They basically cancel each other out. The main part of this deal is definitely Joe Burrow and then Trevor Lawrence in the 26 first. So this is the way I love the dynasty. And what I'm getting at is this is the proper way to tier down. So some people might look at Joe Burrow as a big asset. And if you're going into a rebuild, something that you can acquire multiple assets from. But I believe that this is the proper way to tier down, where you go from a stud asset in Joe Burrow, regularly regarded as a top 5 or 6 quarterback in Dynasty right now. You take Joe Burrow and tier just slightly down to the next tier in Trevor Lawrence and acquire a 26 first on top of it. So the main reason I like this is because Trevor Lawrence is a player who, going into last season, was, going regularly just a pick or two right behind Joe Burrow. Now, Lawrence struggled last season and didn't quite live up to what most expected of him. However, Joe Burrow was dealing with plenty of troubles himself. I mean, he was hurt a lot last season. So both of them disappointed. But why did Joe Burrow stay here and Trevor Lawrence dip down? Now, it's true that Burrow was hurt. So I can see the thought process there in the value in that Burrow was hurt. So his value shouldn't drop from that. But Trevor Lawrence was injured too during the season, and he played through it. But his stats suffered, and now his value has also dropped to the point where as you can see here, you're able to acquire a first on top of him. Now, in the future, let's say 4 or 5 years, I could easily see Trevor Lawrence outscoring Joe Burrow in 1 or 2 of those seasons. And there's some time, I mean, they may be in the playoffs, and you could see Trevor Lawrence defeating Joe Burrow in the playoffs. What I'm getting at is that Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence have a very similar skill set. And now in Jacksonville, they went out and acquired a couple of pass catchers. Yes, they did lose Calvin Ridley. However, they went and grabbed Gabe Davis. They drafted Brian Thomas. And I look at the Jacksonville receiver room as improving versus last offseason. Zay Jones also left via free agency, but Jones was frequently injured last season. Now you get a better setup for Lawrence to throw to. You have Christian Kirk being able to go back to his slot position, Brian Thomas and Gabe Davis on the outside. And then you got the ultimate safety blanket in Evan Ingram, plus a nice pass catcher out of the backfield in Travis Etienne. So I think Lawrence is set up for success heading into this 24 season. Joe Burrow, of course, he was injured like half of the last year, and he is getting T. Higgins back. They franchise tagged him. Now Higgins hasn't reported to camp, but I mean, there's really no way he's going to be able to hold out this year. So, and regardless, if anything happens, I mean, they give him a long term deal. Now I don't know that they can afford to pay Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins big bucks. I don't know if they can pull that off, but at least he's getting Higgins this year. And then they drafted Jermaine Burton as well to either be the number three for a few years or jump into the number two role to replace T. Higgins in the upcoming years. But going back to Trevor Lawrence, this is the ideal way you want to tear down. Now, I don't hate it for break yourself. I mean, I understand the frustration in owning Trevor Lawrence last season. He wasn't a top 10 quarterback. He's got the talent. He had the talent there, and he just didn't quite live up to expectations. But I don't know that I'd want to give up a 26 first just to move up ever so slightly to Joe Burrow. Um, Now, again, as I started, Lawrence was banged up and dropped in value. Joe Burrow was injured and just out for half the season. So that's where Burrow's insulated value stayed the same. Lawrence has dropped down. Now, I'm just looking at it from the perspective of I would think that there's a better way to use the 26 first here from break yourselves perspective, whether he hangs onto it and uses it to draft someone or he uses it in season this upcoming year to grab a running back, grab a wide receiver to fill in for an injury. I just see that as potentially a better way to have used it. So I like the Red Rocket Express side in this deal. And let's move on to the next deal. And that one would be from my Dynastyland League. We actually have a few trades from this league. And so let me slide down here for you folks so you can see it. Hmm. Let me bring up the recent trades. We had a lot of action going on today. We'll start off with the first one right up top here. We had Ramzak Nation acquiring Zamir White from Chris Cash Money for a 25 second. Pretty straight up here. It's about where Zamir White's value is. Chris Cash Money is in a rebuild, so he's looking for draft picks. Ramzak Nation just came off a major rebuild and now is acquiring assets to load up for this 24 season. I see this as a win-win deal for both parties involved. Um, Go back because there are more deals. There we go. Sorry about that. And bring it up. Just want to slide down here. Okay. Next deal had Fantasy Godzilla, newly named May Pokue with his two new draft picks and Drake May and Jalen Polk. He got rid of Najee Harris to yours truly, Schefter Canadian DK. And I was just looking to add to my running back depth here at the same time, block my competition from getting that running back depth. It's something that normally I would have looked to just wait and see and probably acquire during the season. But I do like Najee Harris. I was able to grab him in another league during the draft where I had multiple picks. I gave up 3/3 for Najee Harris and a fourth, so I moved back a little, and I was able to add to my running back room in that other league. So in this league here, Mapoku is going into a rebuild, and so he got rid of Najee Harris. With the news, Najee is slimmed down in camp. That's exciting. I know that everybody is in the best shape of their life at this time of the year, but it doesn't hurt that Najee trimmed down a little, especially with Arthur Smith coming into town to run the show. I can see Harris and Jalen Warren both improving on last season, so they're both going to get plenty of looks. Russell Wilson is coming off of last year where he was he had a struggle last season, but he did target the running backs out of the backfield more than any other quarterback in the league. So that bodes well for Harris and Jalen Warren. Um, I just like the prospects. Harris is my fourth back now behind CMC, King Henry, and Rashad White. So he just beefs up the running back room. If I were to have an injury to one of those three, I'm pretty sure that all three of them are not going to play 17 games this season. So at some point, I'll probably have to plug Najee into the lineup. And rather than having to scramble for someone where somebody can hold me over the coals on a trade, I just went ahead and grabbed Najee, and now it's looking pretty solid in my backfield. As far as May Pokey is concerned, he's just looking for that draft capital, and so he added a nice second and fourth to his portfolio there. Now, before that, earlier this morning, we had another deal in this league, and that would be Mark, team middle of the pack. It's right around where he is. And he went ahead and gave up his pick that he took at the 203, I believe, which was Ladd McConkey, and a 25 third. Sent that over to Chris Cash Money, who I mentioned is in a rebuild. And so he got Matthew Stafford and Deebo Samuel back in that trade. I look at this deal as a sort of a win-win for both parties. Stafford adds to Mark's quarterback room, and Deebo gives him some nice depth at wide receiver. I guess it's a little safer bet than Ladd McConkey for this upcoming season. I see this as a pretty even swap both ways. Better for Chris Cash Money to have the younger wide receiver as well as a 25 third. Middle of the pack is getting some, insurance there. Before that, Chris Cash Money was able to land a second rounder for Daniel Jones from Let's Go Brandon. Rob C coming fresh off a championship season last year where he beat me in the title game. Daniel Jones solidified as the starter for the 24 season with the Giants not taking a quarterback with their number 6 overall pick that they had in the rookie draft. So Daniel Jones is at least the guy this year. That's if he doesn't stink up the joint and Drew Lock takes over. But for the foreseeable future, Daniel Jones will be slinging the rock to Malik Neighbors, and so that helps him out. I do expect Daniel Jones to bounce back this year. He had a very injury-riddled 23 season, so I think that's a good pickup for Let's Go Brandon. Then yesterday we had a nice deal here with Hergot acquiring a big hammer in Tyreek Hill as well as a 25 second from Is This DFS? That's my boy Kyle over on Whatnot, doing things with Choice Sports Cards, your number one choice in buying and selling sports cards. Check them out over there on Whatnot. They're doing things every night for you. So if you're into sports cards, check Kyle out. They've got a great team over there doing some mean business. And Kyle was not shy with this one. He did acquire Tyreek earlier in the offseason from the rebuilder, Mapoku, but he went ahead and decided to get a little younger. He did acquire the 25 first, which is obviously much more flexible than the 25 second. So I can understand, T. Higgins is about, 5 years younger than Tyreek. So, you're going to have a few extra years there, no matter where T. Higgins ends up going next season. He should be a big producer, whether he gets to be the number one for his new team or he ends up maybe staying in Cincinnati as the number two. You know that Joe Burrow's going to be throwing the ball all the time. So T. Higgins, I don't see his production changing much going forward. As long as he can stay healthy, he is a great asset to have in Dynasty. So I don't know that I see I you know Hergot is one of the top three contending teams in this league at this point in my mind, and so acquiring Tyreek definitely helps him for this championship contending season for him. He's probably I mean, he's going to score more points with Tyreek than T. Higgins this upcoming season. Now, for that, we did have another deal from Hergot who went hammer hunting this week, big time. He also acquired Jamar Chase for 325 firsts. That one is juicy. Now, again, you could say that the keep trade cut value may have the DeLorean as the winner in this deal. However, I do like the Chase side. I mean, I can't argue with either side. The DeLorean gets the value, Hergot gets the hammer. So he was able to pick up Jamar Chase and Tyreek Hill for 4 firsts, a second, and T. Higgins. So that's a major upgrade in his wide receiver room. Now he is totally loaded and stacked and ready to go for this upcoming season. Prior to that, let's see. We did have, yes, we had another deal that I was involved in. This one was right during our draft, I believe. And in this deal, I was able to acquire Rachaad White. This was right after the draft. That's right, because I picked Bucky Irving in the third round. And so I had Bucky, and Sean Tucker was still lingering on my bench or on my taxi. So I had the Buccaneers running back room. And so I went ahead and basically made a bet on Rachaad White versus Isaiah Pacheco. Because I also acquired Trey Lance in there. I have Dak Prescott, so Lance is nice insurance there, depending on what happens with Dak and his contract situation. I just wanted to have that assurance that I would still have the Dallas QB if Dak were to move on after this 24 season. So I made a little bet here, going with Rachaad White over Isaiah Pacheco. You could go with either one, honestly. I don't see a difference. They're both getting the bulk of the work with either team. I mean, you can say that Bucky Irving might get some receiving opportunity that takes a little bit of the production away from Rachaad White or what he did last season. Isaiah Pacheco, the Chiefs didn't really spend a whole lot. They haven't brought McKinnon back yet. They did bring CEH back, but obviously he hasn't shown much since his rookie season. So I expect Pacheco to do very similar to what he did last season, and that is be very solid and productive. So this was a win-win for both teams involved in this case. All right. Have any other ones? So let me know in your comments down here if you have any trades you want me to look at, give you some thoughts on whether you should pull the trigger or not. I can help you out there. As always, stay tuned for more from the Birdhouse. Don't forget to check out Choice Sports Cards over on Whatnot with Kyle and the boys. Thank you for helping promote my show. And with that, I'm going to end the stream tonight. Check out more tomorrow when I do finally give you my 5 best dynasty buys in the late rounds of your rookie draft or free agent pickups following the draft, as well as my fades. So be sure to tune in tomorrow for that. With that, I'm going to close out tonight. Thanks for tuning in.